Hi, BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and here is part 4 to my 100 memorable characters and the last part. So this will be 70 through 100. Okay, so the first character is a female character from a classic, and I'm more thinking about the retelling with her character being the central focus to this classic. Because originally, first, I'm talking about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So the main character is Nick. And everything is from his perspective. Well, I don't remember who the author is, but this woman wrote The Chosen and the Beautiful from Jordan Baker's perspective. Now, all we know about her character in the original novel is that she is a famous golfer. She's friends with Jordan. She's Jordan. She is friends with Daisy. And she's kind of a gossip. But we don't know, that's all we know. And she likes the party scene of the 1920s, and she's fun and fancy-free. But this one really highlights who she truly is, or who this author imagined her to be. She is a Vietnamese orphan who was taken to America and adopted, and she's this exotic foreign woman who she's like looked on as an exhibit amongst the elite, the rich upper class, while amongst people that are from her country, she's looked down on and judged. She doesn't fit in when she does at one point try to hang out with those people, but she also does not fit in amongst the upper class either. And she also is someone who has this gift. This is when the fantasy element comes in, where she can fold paper that can come alive, and she has to hide that gift. Now, I wish they had explored that more and had more of that in the story, but they followed the original classic to a T. So we didn't really get to explore that aspect of Jordan's story, which I get why the author did that, but I wish that they had done more with her character in that part of it. And that's kind of why the novel was a disappointment, because even though I love The Great Gatsby, I was disappointed by The Chosen and the Beautiful. They also hint at the possibility of her being in love with Daisy. So she is queer. And she's not the only queer character, and the only character that's hinted as being queer in The Chosen and the Beautiful. And you almost feel like, even if Daisy does love her, at least platonically, she also takes Jordan for granted, and has Jordan wrapped around her little finger as well. Just like she does Gatsby, and you feel sorry for her, but she's such a strong person, doesn't let it get to her. Doesn't let the ridicule and the judgment, or Daisy just stringing her along, get to her. She's such a strong person, even when by the end of it, Nick just is ashamed of her and judges her as being just like everybody else. And he doesn't know much about her because, except for they've had an intimate relationship. Because, so obviously she's not just queer, but she's bi. That they're both maybe bi. So Nick is the other character that might be queer. That they hint at being queer in the story. So she does have an intimate sexual relationship with him, and he's disgusted by her by the end, just like he was in the original story. But he doesn't know her story. He doesn't understand her. And you want to know, and this kind of gives more to her story and more of an understanding to who she is as a person. And, it kind of unveils the mystery behind her, the intrigue behind her. You kind of feel sorry for her. You almost get mad at Nick for the way he treats her. And Daisy, too. Okay, so next is number 71, Carrie White from Carrie. So this was Stephen King's first published novel. And it's a coming-of-age story about this young woman who is suppressed and bullied and controlled by her mom and by her peers at school, till by the end of it, she snaps on prom night. She has this moment of clarity when she ends up getting powers after she has her very first period. She has her period late, and she ends up developing her telekinesis, unreveals itself, and in the first, and at first she can't control it. At first she's afraid of it, but then she uses it. By the end of the story, she uses it to her advantage and punishes her mom and punishes her classmates because she finds out they were only choosing to humiliate her in front of everybody and play a prank on her. And I don't blame her for snapping and getting pissed. And, granted it's an extreme response, but you can't entirely, blame her because of how she was so bullied and controlled, and not just by her peers, but by her mom, too, who is a religious zealot. And you feel so bad for her. And like I said, you can't really blame her for snapping and, punishing everybody by killing them. And it's almost a villain origin story with her character. I think sometimes a lot of people that are bullied secretly wish they had power over their bullies and could punish them. Like, especially in a moment of weakness. A moment when you're told, one day they'll get what's coming to them, and you're like, when will that happen? And it is very tempting to want to seek revenge. The good news is not all of us have that kind of power, so not all of us can murder people. Like I said, that's an extreme reaction. But, she was such a shy, sweet person, and, very submissive, and then to see she goes crazy by the end of it, and loses it, it's like, it makes it all the more terrifying that this shy, sweet person is capable of the things that she does by the end of the movie, by the end of the story, I should say, because it's also, And then next we have number 72, Nikolai from the Grishaverse. Nikolai's awesome. He is a young person that is kind of the black sheep of the family. I think he's a bastard, if I remember correctly. And he ends up being the last remaining heir to the throne. And he's, is young and charming and stuff, and then thrust into this war. And he's one of those people that hides his pain. Like, pretends to be happy-go-lucky even when he's in pain. Like, tries to act like everything's fine. Considering what happens to him in King of Scars duology, and you see what happens to him by the end of the original series, what happens to him in the original series, in the original trilogy, and then see how he deals with King of Scars. It's quite a journey, and you just want to hug him. And I just love his character, I just feel so bad for him. I still have not read Rule of Wolves, but I will get to it, I promise. Ideally, I should get to it this year. But it's just, you feel for him. And he is such a strong character, like I said, he's that guy that person who pretends like he's fine, and he's not, and you admire him, but you also pity him at the same time, because you're just like, you need to stop pretending. It's okay to admit that you are suffering, that you are in pain. You deserve to have someone care for you, and you don't have to be strong all the time. And actually, the next character that I want to talk about, character number 73, also a character from the Grishaverse, also has that mentality of, I'm pretending I'm fine and I don't care, that and that's Brecker. But he's not as likable and charming as Nikolai is. He's kind of an ass, and he takes people for granted, but he pushes people away, and it's very frustrating when he pushes people away. Like, it drives me crazy when male characters do that, and female characters do that too. But most of the time I see with male characters, they just push everyone away because they think they know what's best for them, And they act like they don't care. That's what he does. He is the epitome of that guy that pretends like, I don't care what you think. I want you to hate me. Go ahead, you need to hate me. And you want to be like, stop with the bullshit. You actually care. You love these people. So don't act like you don't care. But then, he's like, he has so much of an head that he needs to push people away to protect them. It's like, no, you do not. There's so many characters that I'm like, no, stop doing that. But Kaz he's also crafty and clever. He outsmarts a lot of people, and he's a charming he's a rogue, and he can be charming when he wants to be, just like Nikolai, except for he's not as friendly as Nikolai is. And even though he looks a little non-assuming at first, but then you realize he can, hurt you. Or at least have someone else do it for him if he wants to, or he can do it himself. There's that character that just comes off as, oh, you think, oh, he's not a threat, but then you realize, oh, shit. And then we have next is, I'm going to go talk about these two characters together because they are from the same book as well, just like the two, but they are also enemies. They are opposing forces, and that is Victor and Eli. They are almost the same, two sides of the same coin. Victor is someone who, well, first let's talk about Eli. Eli is that villain that just thinks he is in the right. He is self-righteous. He wants to punish everyone else while he thinks he's the hero of his own story. He thinks he's the one who deserves the power and everyone else can go to hell. He wants to punish people, and he thinks he's the savior. He thinks he's the worthy one, and he's quite delusional and psychotic, and he's downright scary. But I do feel like he can charm you into believing his philosophies. He kind of like, he reminds me of Magneto in ways. And you just want to punch him in the face. And you pity him. But you also just have to learn more about him when you continue his story. And then you have Victor, who is, these are guys from the Villains series by I want to say it's not Lieber. I don't think it's Lieber Dugo. It's not Lieber Dugo. I cannot remember the author's name, but she's written quite a lot of books, this author, both YA, young adult and middle grade, I believe. I cannot remember. Not Vicious. Vicious is the first book. Now I read Vengeful, and I know there's a third book. Meanwhile, Victor he's an anti-hero. He's not a nice guy. He acts like an ass too, but he's also not a self-righteous bastard. He is someone who he has a one-track mind, and so does Ian. Both of them have one-track minds. He wants to get revenge on Eli for betraying him because they used to be friends, but then something happened between the two of them, and he's almost jealous of Eli, and Eli's almost jealous of him. Like, you wonder why they were evil and friends in the first place. But they were. And then he realizes, but then he actually starts showing signs of compassion, having other people in his life to care about. But like Kaz Brecker from the Six Crows, he pretends that he doesn't care about other people. And you just want to shake him. And you get less, I less feel the urge to punch him in the face as I do with Eli. I want to, smack him upside the head maybe, but not punch him in the face. And he actually shows, even though he pretends he doesn't care, he does show signs of, I care about other people. And he actually is more becoming the good guy than Eli. Eli slowly becoming the bad guy. And I definitely like Victor a little bit more than Eli. Next we have Vasa Lisa from the Winter Night trilogy. So she kind of reminds me of Ashkanishka in Uprooted. She's fiery and seen as plain, but is very powerful, becomes very powerful, and gets the attention of the gods of this world. And she's stubborn, and she doesn't completely let them boss her around. She works with them when she needs to, but she doesn't completely let them boss her around, and, they don't have control over her. She's very feisty and sticks to what she believes in, and she's such a fighter and doesn't, no matter what, no matter who, she doesn't let anyone bully her or push her or suppress her or try to control her beliefs. And she loves her family fiercely and protects them and stays loyal. And she also is such a wild spirit, but she's also very stubborn. And is impulsive and doesn't always acts rashly, and sometimes make reckless decisions. But she also is a very strong-willed person. And like I said, she is a fighter. She's like a lot of YA heroines. The good ones. The ones that Plus, what she's able to do is really cool. And then we have actually... she was number... Vasa Lisa was 77. The actual person after Eli is Evelyn Hugo. And she is very different from some of the other memorable characters because she's not from a science fiction or fantasy. She's actually from contemporary, historical. So actually more historical than contemporary. And that is, like I said, that's Evelyn Hugo from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. By Taylor Jenkins Reads. Evelyn is someone who's faced a lot of adversity, and in a time when people of different nationalities and that they didn't have a certain look were not accepted by society. So she had to change herself a lot to be accepted. Not only is she Cuban, but she's also a queer woman, and she has to pretend that she's not, and she ends up using all these guys to hide who she really is. She cannot stay true to herself, and it's even worse because it's Hollywood. There's a lot more 10 times more pressure in Hollywood for women to act a certain way. And, Hollywood's obsessed with their looks and where they come from and their sexuality and they have to worry women in Hollywood have to worry so much about so many things so they can be accepted by society and make so many sacrifices. I mean, that's why you have things like the Me Too movement, where women have received a lot of bad attention from men. And Evelyn Hugo experiences this. But she's also a fighter, And she's definitely someone who struggles with trying to be true to herself, but also trying to fit in with the mold of Hollywood. And you pity her and you feel bad for her struggle, and you get frustrated when you kind of understand her love and Trish's, broken heart and everything. But you can kind of understand the decisions Evelyn makes. You get it. You get her struggle. You get why she makes the decisions she does, even though they're not the most perfect decisions, and they're decisions where you wish she didn't have to make them. She makes the hard choices. And, this is Hollywood, I mean, I'm kind of seeing this conflict also in the audiobook I'm listening to, where someone is an actor and wants to be a woman and wants to succeed in have a successful career in Hollywood, so they have to make sacrifices and make choices, compromise their principles, because it's not easy to stick to your principles and your morals and values when you are in Hollywood trying to become an actress. Now, obviously, I don't know from personal experience, but, but just the strong, what Evelyn goes through just to, you can't blame her for wanting to be, willing to make sacrifices so she can do well in Hollywood. She can be famous in Hollywood. And maybe that's not the greatest, maybe it's a questionable desire, a questionable career choice, but we can't punish women just because, I'm gonna stop because I don't want to get too preachy here, which is probably too late, but it's definitely an interesting conflict to see a woman struggle trying to survive in Hollywood. Especially a woman of color and a woman of a queer sexual orientation. Okay, so now we're talking about a young male character, and that is Javed from the Dragon Riders Chronicles by, I cannot remember, Conway. I do not remember her first name. Something Conway. Javed is a character who's half and half. He's half human, but he's also half elf. And again, he's another character that meets adversity and is not completely accepted by society. He's bullied by his family that takes him in. And so he's kind of had the similar situation to Harry from Harry Potter. And he's this character that you just, you feel bad for him and you root for him and you want him to do well and become a dragon rider and get the chance to shine and to help save the day and be special and to prove his worth. And he's just, he's such a sweet guy and also naive because he's so young and inexperienced. And it's funny that they do that thing where he starts out looking meek and small and not, nothing impressive. But then there's a word for it when you all of a sudden, you go through puberty. He goes through puberty, all of a sudden he's muscular and seen as like a grown man almost, he looks more closer to in his 20s. It's his transformation makes me think of Steve Rogers in Captain America, except for his transformation is more magical. Steve's, his genetics were altered, but while Javed, his genetics weren't necessarily altered, not science-wise, not scientifically, but, he just goes through a huge ass growth spurt, but despite that, all of a sudden he's more appealing. He stays like Steve Rogers, he stays true to who he is. He is still that kind, sweet young man that wants to fit in and fight for equality amongst the humans and elves. And he's just, he's such a sweetie. He's such a sweet character, and he goes through quite a bit, and he survives a lot, and makes a lot of sacrifice throughout the series. And like I said, he stays true to who he is as a person, even when he goes through that physical transformation. And he's awesome. Which, by the way, that series, it might be Jessica. It might be Jessica Conway. I don't know. I do not remember. But anyway, it's 4 books, and then the author wrote some more books in that world, but it's a new generation. But the Dragon Rider series, like I said, I think it's Jessica Conway. I think. I'm not sure. But the title of the first book is Fledgings. Okay, and then we have an older favorite. We are coming across some older favorites. And that is Magnustain. Magnustain is, again, another character who pretends like he doesn't care, and he's very carefree and just doesn't, like, he's a lot like Nikolai. He's charming, he acts like, he doesn't fall in love easily, he flirts with a lot of people, and also he has really cool powers, as a warlock. And he also meets some adversity, and he struggles with the fact that his dad is a demon. And he is prejudged by the world of the Nephilim, because he's part demon, and people, they act like they're superior, and that people like Magnustain are not worthy of them. And he never loses his cool, he never loses who he is. And he's really likable and charming and fun, and he, just has fun with life and tries to make up for the prejudice he gets and for his broken hearts, and how he lives forever while everyone around him dies, with the exception of a few people here, and a few people that he crosses paths with, like the one vampire woman. I don't remember her name, but and obviously there's a pattern here. I like characters that pretend, keep their emotions hidden and try to pretend that they don't care, but then you as the audience or the reader sees that they do care, and they have these brief flickers, they do have emotions, and they just pretend like they don't care because it's easier that way. It's easier to pretend like it doesn't matter, especially because, they feel like, as long as I don't care, then people won't go after my loved ones, which is bullshit, because the bad guys are not that stupid. They will go after your loved ones. And he has this beautiful love story with one of the characters, Alec, that is just, really sweet and heartbreaking at the same time, and just, especially, knowing where that relationship could end up going. And you just kind of like Magnus. You can't help but like him and be charmed by him. Like I said, he reminds me of Nikolai. Okay, so the next one is actually a real historical figure, but I was reading a fictionalized version of her, and that is Peggy Shippen Arnold. She was married to Benedict Arnold. She manipulated things so she could be married to him. She was part of the British side and wanted the Brits to win over the colonists. And she married Benedict Arnold and manipulated him into betraying the colonists and siding with England. But that backfired on his ass and on hers. She's so manipulative and clever, and she outsmarts everybody. She has her husband Benedict Arnold wrapped around her little finger. And she's very clever. She's this beautiful woman who has every man wrapped around her little finger. She can easily manipulate people, and she uses the one weapon that women were allowed to have, which is their beauty. It's the perfect weapon. And she's just yeah, she does some bad things, but I also can't help but admire her and respect her despite the fact that she's done some horrible things and was a threat to to America's cause, the colonists' cause. And you kind of, again, she's another character that you pity and feel bad for, and you almost want her to get away with it. Almost. But not really, because, we want the colonists to succeed. Of course, we know that we win the war, and because we wouldn't be here today, we would still be part of England. And, but she's just so clever and cocky and confident in herself. But then, you feel sorry for her when everything starts to fall apart. And, you kind of hope that she is okay in the end and gets away, even though she probably doesn't deserve to get away. But, which also, I'm just a big fan of stories that are historical stories that are based on actual history, but they do kind of a more fictionalized spin to the story and the character, the historical figures. And then we have May Holland from The Circle by David Eggers. May is like a representative of a lot of us on social media. She is vain, she likes attention, she wants attention all the time, and she's someone who naively gets a job at this company that is like the equivalent of combining Facebook, Google, Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, and all these social networks, combine them to one big forum where, everybody's on there, everybody, it's like what we fear most. It's like, probably maybe even 10 times worse than what maybe only a little bit worse than how things are for us on here, which I know ironically I say that while I'm filming this video. I think the problem is we need to find a balance between social networks and spending our time on here, but also, being out in the real world and knowing what's really going on, not just looking up on the internet, but actually paying attention, maybe reading a newspaper or something. But anyway, that's a whole different conflict. But that's kind of what The Circle is. The Circle by David Eggers is about. And May is someone that likes social media, loves attention, and becomes just like everybody else. And you just root for her to finally realize that she's being selfish and she needs to stop exposing her family and exploiting them. But then, by the end, minor spoiler, she proves us all wrong and just ends up not doing something that we would think is the right thing. We consider the right thing. It's a surprise what happens at the end with her character. And she's not a likable person. She's a very selfish and very vain person. It takes her family and her boyfriend for granted. And you just, they make it clear they don't want the attention. They don't want to be camera. They don't want their lives on camera 24/7. But she doesn't listen because she cares about the attention. And she gets wrapped up in all of this. Stuff like what I'm doing right now. Only worse. At least I think it's worse. And, she's unlikable. And, what bugged me about the movie, which, I'm not surprised, typical of Hollywood, which is why I'm so conflicted about that whole Hollywood, versus, versus the original source material, the original book, and, adaptations and stuff. They made her more likable. They tried to make her more likable. I mean, the movie is pretty good adaptation, but what bugged me is, and some of the changes I understand, and unfortunately, I kind of understand to an extent why they made her more likable, because unfortunately, I don't think they're entirely wrong when they say that people don't like horrible characters that are unlikable as a main character. You can't root for them. But I think they missed the point with The Circle and May's arc. You're not, it makes it more compelling and more surprising in a good way when you find out that May has not learned anything and it's too late for her by the end of the book. And I think it's a very scary book, but it's also a very good book. And her journey is such a shock. And you're just surprised by her. And this is one of the times where I actually don't mind the character being all vain and unlikable. I kind of liked it and it worked for the story. And I almost prefer the characters that pretend to be nice over the ones that just have a bad attitude. I think that was my biggest problem. Part of my biggest problem with A Deadly Education is that main character had a bad attitude. And May was very, charming and poised and perky, And then we have the antagonist, one of the antagonists, because there's technically two antagonists in the Carver series. And that is Legend. Legend is like, he's mysterious and charming. He runs this traveling carnival that puts on a show, and one of our girls is very much drawn to him, and she can't help it. And he's just, he's so mysterious. People are just drawn to him, and you want to know his deal and want to understand him. And that, I definitely wanted to know his backstory. And it sounds like we're getting that in Once Upon a, or at least maybe not, I don't know about his backstory, but we might be getting the backstory of at least one of the antagonists. But I'm hoping that maybe we'll get a little bit of his backstory in Once Upon a Broken Heart. But I have not read it yet, so I'm kind of waiting for it to come out on paperback. But I just wanted to know more about him. There was such mystery and intrigue behind his character. And he's definitely one of those characters that starts out as kind of a bad guy, but he starts falling for one of the girls. And like I said, I'm not, I don't want to tell you any more about how things go with Legend, but you're definitely drawn to him and compelled by him, because he at times seems charming and likable, but then other times you want a piece of night crazy, you want to sometimes punch in the face, and you shake your head, it's like, you dumbass. And then we have two Cerseis, actually. We have Cersei by Madeline Miller, and she's the witch from the Odyssey, and it's her origin story. She's another character who experienced a lot of ridicule, and she's forced to take care of herself and be strong, and she doesn't fit in with her family, and she ends up being isolated and punished, and she does what she can to keep herself content and survive, and to be at peace. Even though she's isolated, she stays strong. She does whatever she can to fight, to stay strong and to not let her people, where she comes from, those people bully her and make her feel bad about herself. She does not let anyone break her. And, she seems like this villainous character in the original Odyssey, but then as you read Cersei, you realize maybe she still has her own story. She's still very human. And with a lot of great power, that, maybe she was acting rashly but she did it in self-defense. And you kind of like her and feel sorry for her. And I think a lot of authors are starting to take characters from classics and explore their points of view and make you actually feel bad for them and understand them a lot better, and to realize they're not all that bad, and, they got a raw deal in the original source material. They did not get enough credit. Plus, her power, she's kind of cool. She can do things like turn people to pigs. Her powers are really cool. Okay, so the next Cersei, this is number 84, is Cersei Lannister. And she is a survivor. She's like Selena Kyle from Batwoman. She does whatever she can to survive. And yeah, there are selfish reasons, but her one quality that makes up for her villainous acts is she loves her children more than anything and will do anything to protect them. And, unfortunately, that's anything. Even manipulate things and punish people that hurt her children, or that she feels like could hurt her children. That is her one good quality, is that she is a good mother. Actually, that's kind of debatable. But I should say, not necessarily a good mother, but she's a loving mother. She loves her kids. Unfortunately, she kind of spoils them. Particularly, Joffrey. She's the reason he's such a spoiled brat and so violent and scary. He's another great character. Because of his sinisterness and his wickedness. Which is all Cersei's fault. But you gotta remember, she will protect her kids to the end, to the death. And she's a fierce mama bear. That's the one thing her and Catelyn have in common. They love their kids. And will do anything for them. And, you respect her and fear her for all the things that she does to get what she wants, and to protect her children, and to protect her family's legacy, and to be seen by her father for who she truly is. Because her father just is like,
you're someone often, you're someone that's meant to be married off. And unfortunately, it's not entirely her father's fault. It's not entirely Tywin's fault, because that's how society was. How society was in their world is based on medieval setting, a medieval world. So that's how they think, Men are pigs, and the men are pigs, and they just marry. Well, not all of them, but they marry, and they think, oh, I'm in charge, and I'm just gonna marry this woman off, my sister or my daughter, and I can do whatever I want because, I can, she's meant to take care of my household and give me babies so that they can take my place. My son can take my place when I die, because I'm not immortal. And you just feel so. She deals in a very sexist world that it ridicules her for being a woman, and she wants to basically be her brother Jaime, and that's part of why she's having this inappropriate relationship with him. She wants to be him. And like I said, you kind of feel bad for her. You feel her struggle and her desperation to protect her kids and to be like, I'm more than just the little wife. I am more than just a beautiful woman. And is all these women, that's what they want. They all take different paths and different approaches to things, and but they're all understandable. Maybe they're not the most moral or best choice, but you can blame them. And like I said, you almost respect her in a way. You respect Cersei Lannister. And, I love the back and forth between the brother and the sister, her Tyrion and Cersei's witty repartee. And poor Jaime is in the middle between the two of them. And, I do respect Cersei, but I think Jaime can do a whole lot better than his sister. Not just because it's disturbing that he's in love with his sister and has sexual relationships with her, but just, even if she weren't his sister, he could do better. And he does almost do better, but then he screws that up. If you see in the show, if you watched it and saw the last 2 seasons, which we all agree were horrible, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I definitely respect and admire her. I don't think she chooses the most admirable, so actually I shouldn't say admire, but I respect her. And because I wouldn't agree that her choices are admirable. Okay, so next we have 2 characters from a series I read just last year, and that is the 2 characters from the Bartemius trilogy. There is a 4th book, but it's a prequel. Bartemius, number 85, and Nathaniel, 86. These 2, first of all, they make an amusing, entertaining team, but then that team starts to fall apart really quickly. Nathaniel, again, is another character where this is kind of a villain origin story, almost. There is a reason why I said almost, but I don't want to spoil it too much. I probably spoiled a lot of things for a lot of these characters. But unfortunately, I don't know how to, be like, this is a spoiler, avoid this time. I don't know how to do that. But Nathaniel is someone who starts out as kind of innocent and young and just maybe a bit angry and with a temper because of the way he's treated by his master and taken for granted and humiliated by his master and his master's colleagues, and which is the motivation for his conflict when he does his actions throughout the whole book. He's someone who has these big dreams and ambitions and knows that he can do more with his life and wants to make something of himself. And he has goodness in him in the first book, but he starts to lose that and become no better than the rest of the government, which the government is controlled by wizards, by magicians in this story. And he is someone that is just he could do a lot more and, you know, could help things and change things, but he ends up choosing not to. So just his arc is pretty amazing. Like, and it feels, at least to me, it feels very different than what I'm used to seeing in YA and middle grade books. Because I think it starts out as a middle grade, but then it goes into YA territory as Nathaniel gets older. And because I assumed when I first started reading it was more middle grade. It felt like that, but like I said, as the story progressed in books 2 and 3, I realized, well, actually, this is more YA. But it's his arc alone that makes him a little, and he's so, at the same time, he's also very annoying, and you just want to shake him and be like, stop being a dumbass, wake up. Your government is in the wrong. They are morally wrong. And you don't see it. Like, you just want to be like, just, again, another character that I just want to punch in the face. You know, and, you know. And you can't give me the excuse of, oh, he's just a kid. Because he grows up with the story. And then the other character is the title character, and that is Bartemius. Bartemius is snarky, and he's funny, and he's a djinn. So he has a lot of power, and he's very sassy, you know. He's not, you know, he is that kind of person who uses humor to make up for his insecurities and his fears. He, you know, he hides behind humor. And throughout the whole book, you know, Jonathan Stroud includes footnotes at the bottom, which is commentary from Bartemius and his thoughts and just his opinions on humans and the other djinn, and he's just so disrespectful but so charming and funny, and you kind of can't help but like him. You know, I definitely liked him a lot more than Nathaniel, in all honesty. He's amusing and entertaining. Like I said, and the footnotes are not boring. The footnotes are very entertaining to read as well. Because it's basically his commentary and his opinion on things. And you feel bad for him because he ends up being enslaved, and he's actually a nice djinn, you know? And he understands things and sees things a lot more clearly than Nathaniel does. And then we have Mia Corvair. Now, I decided not to continue. I have not read the last book. I mean, I could because there's only one more book left. But I still haven't got around to it. Maybe I'll see if it's on audiobook or something. Maybe I'll get my iBook and listen to it via there. I'll see how much it costs. But Mia Carver is a badass. She kind of reminds me of Yennefer in a lot of ways. She starts out this angry teenager who is not seen as very pretty, and she becomes a badass and an assassin. She goes to an assassin school and gets caught up in this war because, like, she wants revenge. Because in the first book you find out that her family was murdered, and she wants revenge and wants to get back at the people that murdered her family. And who can blame her? I would want to too. If I was capable and had the power, I would so recklessly come after him when he was hurt my family. And she has the means to do it. So she and the girl is batshit crazy, but she's powerful and strong and confident, and she's just so badass and awesome. And she's not like completely bad. She's also is a good, compassionate person that just wants revenge and is full of a lot of rage. And her ability to connect with these shadow animals is really cool. These shadow pets. But she's also someone who's very naive and impressionable and lets her desire for revenge get the best of her. And blinds her to what's really going on. I mean, she almost doesn't catch it until towards like halfway, you know, she finally realizes what the truth is and that she's been manipulated this whole time. Now I don't know, like I said, I've not read the last one, so who knows where the story is going to go. And she has very complex romantic relationships. I think she's kind of caught in the middle, although I have a preference. I kind of lean towards a certain one in that love triangle. But Mia is just awesome, and I definitely, like, I may not finish the series, I may or may not finish it, but I do agree with everybody. Her character is so great, and just so rich. I don't know if I would want to be her friend. She would scare me, and she probably wouldn't want to be my friend anyway. But she is awesome, an awesome character. Very memorable. And then we have another character that is from a retelling, a reimagining, and that's Elizabeth Frankenstein, which I think she was a character mentioned in the original Frankenstein novel. She is mentioned, I think, once. And, I cannot remember what the book is called. I can picture the cover. It's pink. And it looks like skin that's stitched together. I wish I could remember what it's called. But it's her story, and she's someone who is forced into hanging out with Victor and being his friend, and then she falls in love with him and devotes her whole life to him and is so loyal to him, and you just get so frustrated with her because you're like, why are you loyal to this guy? He is an asshole. And despite that, I feel like she's still a strong person. She remains true to herself and stays strong the whole way through, even though, you pity her because she is devoted to this guy who does not deserve her. And that's Victor, who takes her for granted, and she stands up for herself and fights back. But at the same time, she's very vulnerable and doesn't stand up for herself enough. But she does at times when she needs to, when she feels like she needs to. And she's someone that, Victor does not realize how lucky he is that she's so loyal to him and is completely devoted to him. And again, I don't, I want to understand her, and I wish she wasn't so loyal to him, but she is. And you gotta admire her and respect her and how strong she tries to be throughout this whole situation. And you can't blame her because she doesn't have a lot of options, and she will be thrown out on the street unless she sticks to Victor like glue and stays loyal to him and loves him and, is his companion. She will be tossed out and abandoned, and so she can't have that happen. This is all she has. So you can't blame her for being willing to be devoted to a guy that doesn't deserve her, because what else is she gonna do? She doesn't have any options. And you gotta admire her strength, her willingness. And then we have Jupiter North, from which I should have. I'm gonna have to put Holopox as a book on my thrift books, or on Amazon or something, because I keep thinking about getting it, but then I don't get it. And I did like that series. I have liked it. But Jupiter North from Holopox, he rescues the main character. I already forgot her name. He takes her in. And the problem with him is that he doesn't give her all the information. He's kind of like Dumbledore, where he's charming and very kind and loving to her, but then he doesn't tell her everything because he's trying to protect her and thinks, oh, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And then she ends up, Morgan Crow, that's her name. Morgan finds herself in predicaments all because Jupiter did not tell her everything, and it's like, why didn't you tell her everything? Just tell it to her straight. Give her everything she needs to. Every single thing she needs to know. No thing. Don't leave out anything. Do not. And he refuses to do that. He gives her what he thinks she needs to know. And then, but he doesn't give her everything. And this is very frustrating and annoying. But he's also likable. And you could tell he really cares about Morgan and wants to be there for her, but he also has a lot of pressure, and he's very stressed. And he's that person who thinks he can handle everything, but he can't. It's like, let people help you. Stop trying so hard to do everything on your own. And maybe if you stop trying to do everything and focus on Morgan, then maybe things would be better. Although, and I'm curious where I do want to know where the relationship is going to go, if it's going to fall apart. Because it potentially could fall apart. And just, because like I said, he doesn't tell her everything. But like I said, despite that, he is likable, and again, you can tell he really cares about Morgan, and he wants to protect her, and he's like a combination of Dumbledore and Willy Wonka. Where he's fun and charming and a bit eccentric, but then at the same time, he's very protective and coddles and shelters Morgan and doesn't tell her everything, but he's also very powerful. And he runs things and knows exactly what he's doing, or at least, you get the impression that he does. And you kind of want to hang out with him at the same time, but you also are like, you have to tell her. You have to tell her everything. I don't care how much you think, oh, I can tell her that later when she needs it. Because she might be in a situation that's going to get her into big trouble if she doesn't know everything and doesn't understand everything that's going on. Okay, so next is a character from an epic poem, and he's a character that is introduced. They made a movie, which I have not seen yet. It's The Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is the epic poem. And more for him, I want to know more about him. He was so interesting and mysterious. You don't know anything about him except for he has powers. Maybe that he's immortal. You can cut off his head apparently and he'll survive. There's so much mystery. You don't know much about him. You do get a little glimpse of him because in the middle of the story where he just seems jolly and friendly and you want to know more about him. I have not seen the movie, but I do want to see it. But what's compelling, what's memorable about him is he's such a mystery, and also you can cut off his head and he'll survive. And he makes a deal with Arthur to send where one of his knights has to meet him and let the knight cut off his head as well. And you're very intrigued. Oh, excuse me. You're very intrigued by him, and you want to understand. You just are so fascinated. You want to just go along for the ride, and you want to go on this journey with Goblin as well, because you just want to understand. And he also seems kind of creepy and mysterious at the same time. You don't know, how is it possible that this guy you can chop off his head and he still lives? What's his deal? Like I said, there's just a lot of intrigue and mystery behind the Green Knight. And then we have a middle grade that is not as well known, and that is Minimus. And I do not remember the author, but this is basically about these two kingdoms at war, and the one king gets tricked by his enemy, and his people get imprisoned, and then they lure the son, the young teenage Prince Florin, and he is held prisoner, and basically made, instead of being left in the dungeons with his father and his father's men, he is actually turned into the court jester, and actually an apprentice to the court jester, Minimus. Minimus is he's funny and snarky, and he knows how to mock the king, but in an amusing way that the king doesn't even realize it. His king doesn't. And he, at first he seems like an ass to the young boy, to the prince, but you realize that he's doing this kid a favor by protecting him, knowing this kid will get killed, and doing everything he can to teach this kid so that he will survive. He really starts to care about this kid, this young prince, and feels for him, and then they slowly develop a friendship, and then this boy realizes, he wants to help Minimus escape and go back to where his life was before. And it's kind of a sad story, kind of a weird one, and it's just a very dark fairy tale basically, and you kind of understand why Minimus treats this young kid the way he does. Because, like I said, he's trying to protect him, because right now, the kid doesn't have a lot of options. His father and his father's men are in prison. They cannot escape. And what is this kid supposed to do? He's a young boy. He hasn't learned enough to fight back. And I don't even remember how it actually ended, but Minimus, and there's more to Minimus than meets the eye. He is not someone who's given up. He's not completely pathetic. He seems that way on the surface, but then as you get to know him, and you see what he does for this young Prince Florin, you actually realize he's a lot stronger and tougher than you give him credit for. And again, just like the young boy, what else is he supposed to do? He has no way of escaping and of his situation, so the only thing he can do is play along and deal with how the king treats him. And you admire him for his bravery and his willingness to, you get, again, another frustrating character, because you want him to escape and you want to stand up for himself, but if you were in that situation, could you stand up for yourself? This guy's a king. He can kill you. He can chop off your head or whatever, or beat you and break you, and he never completely breaks Minimus. Minimus remains strong. And I would love to see an adaptation of it on, like, the Sci-Fi Channel or something, or, like, one of the streaming networks. So, but Minimus, it is such a great book. I wish I could remember who the author is, but like I said, it's called Minimus. And it has like a creepy court jester kind of guy on the cover, holding a little guy like a puppet, something like that. And I think that's pretty foreign in a Minimus, but it's such a great story. Like, and then we have Eleanor Oliphant. I am convinced she's on the spectrum, if I remember. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think she's on the spectrum. But she also is someone who experienced a lot of trauma, and she's an alcoholic, and she's that person, again, who pretends, oh, I'm fine, nothing bothers me. She acts like she's perfectly content with her life, loves her routine, and, like, there are a lot of personality traits that, just because you experience trauma and that affect you doesn't mean you're not on the autism spectrum. There are definitely some traits, but again, I'm not an expert, so I could totally be wrong. The only way I can know is the author herself, having to ask her. But Eleanor is someone who thinks she's happy and perfectly content, but then she slowly realizes what she's missing out on. She's missing out on friends. She's missing out on healing her relationship with her mother, healing her heart after the trauma she experienced as a young woman, and just healing herself, forgiving her mother. She goes through so much, and she remains strong, and it breaks your heart seeing her struggle and seeing her not realize that she has been traumatized her whole life and trying to hide behind alcohol and having her routine in her contentment with her life. But then it gets shaken up by this coworker and this old man that they both decide to help. And you want her to be happy, genuinely happy, not like delude herself into thinking that she's happy. Like, you want to see her figure things out and to forgive herself and heal herself. And of course, we as the reader can see what she herself cannot see. And just next we have 92, which is Light Song. Night Song from Warbreaker. Oh my god. He is such a funny character. He's so snarky and sarcastic. And he is a character that became a god. But then he does not believe in himself. He does not believe he is a god. He constantly questions his godhood. And he finds it amusing that people worship him. He does not understand it. He does not get it. And he's constantly questioning things. And he's just so funny and likable, and you're so entertained by him and his snarkiness. And you also want to know why he was, what happened to, who he was before, why he's a god. You just, like, he's just such a fun character to spend time with, and he sees things a lot more clearly than some of the other characters. And like I said, it's just so funny that he does not believe he is a god. He doesn't believe in his own godhood. And it's just, well, everyone else worships and respects him and admires him and even fears him, and he's like, why? I mean, what's the deal? I'm not, so why am I the joke? Why am I a god? I mean, there's a lot of great characters in War. I wouldn't say that I prefer, I think I prefer the story Warbreaker, but I also do really love Elantris. And I don't agree with everybody else, but although I haven't compared the writing between Elantris and some of his more later books. And that's one of the big things is it feels very different, especially writing-wise. Elantris does compared to all the other books. I also like Warbreaker's magic system a little bit better. Then we have Evie O'Neill from the Diviners. I just reread the first book because I've been meaning to read the second one because I have a paperback copy, or a hardback copy of the second one, so I've been meaning to pick it up. Evie O'Neill is sassy and fun, just wants to have a fun life, a fun, happy, definitely a flapper from a small town who wants more from life. The problem is that she has this psychic ability. She has this power, a touch no. That's what it was called in Rose Red miniseries, a touch no, or because they cannot say that the word, what the scientific term for what they're called, like a psychometry or something. And basically she can read objects and learn their past and learn something about the person who last touched them. And with this power, she was ridiculed and was mocked and told that she just makes it up for attention in her hometown. So she goes to New York to live with her uncle who runs an occult museum, and she has to hide her gift. But then it ends up benefiting her to help solve the murder mysteries that happens in the story. And she ends up, and she hides her feelings on things, and hides her vulnerability and her fears and her heartbreak over the loss of her older brother. And you just feel for her so much because she is in pain, she is suffering, and she hides behind it with this carefree, rebellious attitude, and you just feel for her while everyone guilt trips her. Her uncle and her parents guilt trip her, like, how can you be so cruel, and, we lost a son, or your parents lost a son, and you just want to tell these people, she lost a brother, her best friend. And she is just as heartbroken as you are and has this gift that no one believes in her, and people mock her and ridicule her. And she is someone that just, puts up all these walls to pretend like she's fine and that she isn't hurting inside. And then doesn't allow people to come in and see what she's really feeling. And her fun loving personality I would love to hang out with, and it's just you want to root for her, And you want her to get what she wants, to be happy, and to be accepted, and to be loved, and she isn't all the time. Or, and of course she's, her current love, the guy she's currently pretending to be with, the problem is he does like her, but she doesn't like him, and he's not the one that I want her to be with. But that's a whole nother thing. Evie is just, she's lovable, and she doesn't always do the right thing, is impulsive, and maybe putting out the diviners, abilities of diviners, was a bit too much. Putting it out in the world was not fair to the others, because she assumes that everybody wants to be special, everyone wants their gifts out there, but it's not as easy, and it's even harder because Evie is a well-to-do, some decent, somewhat well-off white girl, and also these other characters are immigrants, or from immigrant families. And so it's easy for her to make herself a star and to hide behind this stardom. Well, the other characters cannot hide as easily. But she's fun and fancy free, but you also, she has her flaws like any other character, and I wish I could think of a better word than frustrated, but I can't think of a better word. You get very, I just cannot think of a better word than frustrated. Okay, almost done. I have a few more to go. So next we have another mother character, and that's Sanja from Poaching Pachinka. This is another coming of age story in a way. This young girl, she falls in love with a rich guy, and he gets her pregnant. The only problem is he is married and has his other kids, and he says we can't be together because of that. But you can be my mistress, but you can't be my wife. And so she does not want, that's the last thing she wants. So she stays strong and walks away from him. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Jane Eyre. And she gives him up and is forced to admit to her mom, I'm pregnant with this guy's child. And she ends up marrying this other random stranger who shows up and decides to do the nice thing, a kind thing, and be like, and he's, a preacher, or something, not a preacher, but a minister. I don't know what the actual title would be, but this man of God comes in and is like, I want to help you out, because she comes as a very sweet, kind person who deserved to be helped. So he gives her shelter, marries her, gives her a home, and to her about her journey and her struggles, because she still kind of harbors this love for the father of her baby. And she watches her son grow up and take care of him, and the struggle she goes through to survive and make enough money and to be accepted by her brother-in-law, and what she goes through, and the ridicule, and how this guy, the father of her child, will not leave her alone and shows up wanting to be a parent to her son. And she's like, no, I raised this kid on my own, all because you lied to me and did not mention that you already have kids and a wife. And this guy acts like, well, so what? I'm a guy, I can do what I want. And he does not respect her. And she remains strong. She fights back constantly and doesn't completely give in to him and what he wants. And she loves her two boys more than anything. Unfortunately, that relationship falls apart because, but she stays strong all the way through, and all the way, and you just, again, she's another character you just want her to be happy, but it's not easy because her, she is just judged by the world and has to work hard to survive and to, make a life for herself and her sons and her husband, and you just feel so much for her. She is a fighter, like Kate Reese from Imaginary Friend. And then we have Miss March from the book Miss March. And no, this has nothing to do with Little Women. This is a book by Virginia Faito. This is a woman who is married to a famous author. And she's got a moved on. She at first was interested and intrigued by him and his work, but then she kind of moved on. Occasionally she looks at his work. She knows it exists, obviously, but all she cares about is being the wife, the housewife of her rich husband. And then she finds out that a character that's supposed to be horrible, she knows it's supposed to be horrible and unlikable, is based on her. She's told by a third party. And she's not read the book, and so she does not understand why. And she slowly, over time, goes crazy and becomes obsessed with this to the point where she's paranoid about her husband. And we see her slow descent into madness. But I mean, any character that happens to it's a compelling read, because just watching them slowly, bit by bit, lose themselves. This woman, she's a perfectionist. She's obsessed with her perfect life. Everything has to be pristine and a certain way so she can be accepted and embraced by society. And you just want to understand her. It's creepy being inside her head and seeing her slowly go crazy. It's jarring, and you don't know if she's just seen things or if there really is something there. And you feel bad for her because, her husband takes her for granted, and, her obsession, and you want to be like, stop obsessing, you don't have to be perfect all the time, and stop being paranoid. It's just another character what makes her memorable is her journey, and as she goes crazy and is obsessed. The first thing that came to mind was Stepford Wives when reading the book Miss March by Virginia Fido. Okay, and then we have Frida Klein. I have started the series. I did read Friday on My Mind first, and then I read Blue Monday. I've not read the rest of the books yet, but maybe I will soon. I just want to kind of make a dent on my own personal collection first and read a few more books before I start going to the library, maybe in the spring. I'll start going to the library again. Frida Klein is very unlikable. She's kind of very distant emotionally and socially. She doesn't interact with a lot of people. She's a therapist, and she's also fascinating because she's very closed off, and you want to know why. I wanted to know why she was so closed off, why she's so emotionally distant. She's definitely that character that just pushes people away, and it's better this way, and she has intimacy issues. But you can see her vulnerability, and you can see she has emotions. She's not completely emotionless. She's still a human being. It's just she hides it well and tries to remain neutral and tries to, and she's a hard ass, and you get frustrated because she understands things that the cops don't about people, about human nature. And that's why she becomes kind of an amateur detective. Like I said, sometimes the most interesting characters, the most entertaining characters to read about are unlikable characters. Especially because when they're trying to make a point with their unlikability. Like May from David Eggers' The Circle. Now, I don't think Frida Klein was trying to make a point, but she sees things that others don't, and she does her best to not get emotionally involved. Okay, and then next we have, so the next two characters are characters that are they're originally from books, but I DNF'd the book, but I've seen the movie. I've seen 2 adaptations, because there are more adaptations of this, and that's the March sisters, Jo and Amy. They were always my 2 favorites. Jo is a tomboy. She's feisty, and she comes from a time period where women didn't have a lot of power and couldn't do a lot, and the only thing they were seen to fit for was to make babies, get married. And she wants so much more out of life, and despite the way the world is with women, she is a fighter and fights for equality and fights to be an independent woman and not to settle down and be married. She is strong and true, tried and true person, But she also has a temper, and she admits it. She loses her temper and acts irrationally and will do impulsive things that she probably shouldn't do. And she constantly butts heads with the other one, Amy, who is a girly girl. You know, she wants to, you know, paint while Joe wants to write. I mean, they both are artists, and they're both very emotional. You know, they represent that cliche, that trope of temperamental artist, which I think can be true in a lot of ways, you know. I mean, but of course, maybe that's because they think they need to be that way. Or maybe it's because they feel like they need to put all their emotions in their art. But then they can't because they're still human. It's a struggle to do that. And, you know, they can't, like, it's not like you can go to work, you can make your art all the time, you know. You know, it's when inspiration hits. Sometimes you can be working all day and then, but you aren't actually working because inspiration hasn't hit you yet. Both girls are dreamers and they want more out of life. They are a lot alike. And yet they don't realize it. And they both have tempers. And they're both passionate women, young women. And emotional. The only difference is the maturity level because Amy is the baby of the family. And they both are, you know, one of them, they both are kind of caught in the middle with Laurie because Amy loves Laurie, but Laurie loves Joe, and Joe does not love Laurie. She just sees Laurie as a brother, but then she grows to love him in a romantic way, or, you know, she misses him. She ends up realizing that she misses him. And they go their separate ways. But they are so much alike. They just want different things out of life. They want different dreams. But they're kind of similar dreams. And, you know, and they are just, I want to, you know, I definitely see myself in those two more so than in Beth and Meg. But, although, I will say I'm a lot more shy than those two. So maybe there's a little bit of Beth and Meg in me as well. But, they're very, like I said, I love those two girls. And then, we have 2 more to go. And then I'm finally done. And that is Peter Pan, first of all. A character from a classic. The boy who never grew up. Peter is a brat. And he's even more evil than the Disney movie. You know, he does a lot of things. He, you know, if one of his lost boys chooses to, you know, decides to grow up, he will punish them for that. Very brutally. And he's just a child, you know. He doesn't realize that his actions are not good, that he is immoral and should not be doing things because he has not developed. He never grew up. So has not developed to think like an adult and to question things and to realize that things are very complicated and we have complicated emotions. And he's like sadistic but fun at the same time. And a part of me wants to go to Neverland, but then a part of me is like, no, I gotta grow up. I gotta stay grown up. I cannot get lost in Neverland. And it's interesting that the movie Hook shows what if Peter grew up. And we get glimpses of the temper that Peter has as a kid. And, like, he's just a little bit more mature and has more different kinds of problems, more adult problems to worry about. And he's selfish. He wants to keep Wendy there forever and is like, when she says, no, I can't stay here forever. I have to go back and I miss my mother and father. He's like, well, then fine. He has a temper tantrum, basically. And you just, like, I feel like he could be a polarizing character because I think some people would like him, you know, some people would be annoyed by him, but other people would find him likable and charming in a way in his brattiness. And I'm one of the people that likes his brattiness, you know, and just how sinister he is, like, and vindictive, all because he's a child. He's, wants to get his way all the time. It's all his way or the highway mentality. And of course, he is a child that did not grow up. So he cannot be like, okay, let's compromise. Or, okay, it can't always be my way. Sometimes there are things that get in the way, and not everybody wants things what I want. Some people want different things. And he doesn't understand that. But like I said, he's just very selfish, but also kind of fun to read about. And then finally we're on the last character. Character 100, and that is Susanna Walker from the Dark Tower series. I just recently reread. I read books 1 through 3 years ago, and it's been a long time, so I decided to reread books 1 and 2. And then I'm going to get to book 3 and 4 this year, ideally. And I have to buy another copy of 3 and 4 of books 5 and 7. I almost bought one of them today, but then, I decided to get a Joe Abercrombie book first. But Susanna Walker starts out as a character that has 2 different personalities. She has DID, and after this trauma she experiences as a little black girl, when this white guy that is a criminal accidentally tosses a brick on her for fun. Because he thinks it's funny. The little bastard, that he is. And, this breaks her mind a little bit. And she has 2 different personalities, and she doesn't even realize it. It's if she puts up a defense mechanism. One personality is very sweet, very kind. And then you have the other personality who's like a feisty bitch who doesn't trust anyone and thinks everyone's evil and everyone's out to get her. And you just cannot stand her. And she's like psychotic, but then you can't hurt her because she's part of the other personality, and that you like, and that you're charmed by, and you want to hang out with, and you fall in love with. And that's like, how do you handle that? What do you do? And she's just a sadistic, paranoid bitch, and you just want to be like, you delusional idiot. But then at the same time, like I said, she's part of the other personality who's not a bitch, who's actually really kind. And then she becomes such a strong character. Like I said, granted, I haven't read the rest, but she's fascinating. Just the idea of 2 different personalities clashing with each other is just like such an interesting story, and I look forward to continuing her journey, because I think she becomes a really strong, confident, loving character as the story progresses. So those are my top 100 memorable characters. As I said in the other videos, feel free to tell me which character are you familiar with these characters? I'm assuming you're familiar with at least some of them, and feel free to share your thoughts on these characters in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed me sharing these characters that are memorable to me, and I hope you are doing well, and you are enjoying your reading and staying safe and healthy, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!